to say the least. Right now, we go to our good friend, Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is the U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSite News, and we spoke last night. Ben, you joined us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time. What story has jumped out at you the most over the last 24 hours when it comes to the fight for life in this country?
Well, there's a breaking story right now, of course. In the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled 5-4 to uphold the Texas law that Wendy Davis made her name on. It's a bill that ends abortion after 20 weeks, but there were other provisions within that didn't make as big headlines. One of them is that doctors have to have, abortionists, I should say, and I hate to call them doctors, but abortionists who don't administer life-saving medicine, but who administer life-ending medicine, have to have admitting privileges at a hospital within 30 miles of their office. Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, and NARAL have sued. A Bush-appointed judge, appointed by George W. Bush, had actually sided with Planned Parenthood, but then the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals overruled them. The Supreme Court just handed down a 5-4 ruling upholding the Texas law. It was written by Justice Scalia, joined by the conservatives and the swing vote Kennedy. The four liberals on the other side, led by Breyer, said that this would be an undue burden on Texas women who were seeking an abortion, but the five justices held the line. So the law will go into effect. It's already in effect, and it will not be overturned. 5-4, upholding the idea that doctors, if they botch an abortion, if they botch a surgical procedure that could and has and regularly on regular intervals does kill women, they should have the ability to admit them to a local hospital. And even the one dissent that we had here, a judge by the name of V. Yakel, had said that abortionists just behave so badly. There's no guarantee that they would even follow this law. That was his basis for overruling the law, was that even if you pass the law, they won't enforce it and they won't follow it. But the Supreme Court justices have
that was his basis. Yeah, that was his basis for opposing. This is a judge.
It's lawlessness encoded into law, if you can imagine such a thing.
Wow.
So luckily it was overturned. It was overturned.
That's great news.
But that's very big. And then, of course, the city of Albuquerque is voting today on a bill that's identical to the most celebrated portion of that law, the one that Wendy Davis wore her bright shoes and opposed, which is to end abortion after 20 weeks, with the exception of rape or incest in the case in Albuquerque, or to save the life of the mother. The entire city is voting on that. I know 44,000 people voted early, which is not a good sign. Typically, early voters are not conservative voters. But we will see what happens with this. The results will be in this evening, long after our program is over, because, of course, they're in another part of the country. But we will hope for a good result there. The polls initially were very encouraging, so we'll see how that comes out.
And we will look to you, Ben Johnson, U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSite News, for the information. I'll post your latest story up on the Facebook page, as always. Hey, Ben, when we get these victories, the pro-life movement gets the victories, when life gets the victory in the states, and we think about what was done through Roe v. Wade, which took it out of the state's decision-making ability and right, does the left fear this becomes a states' rights issue because they recognize that they are on the wrong side of history? And, when I ask that question, I think I'm casting aspersions on their motives, and yet I believe some people are misinformed and maybe have a point of view and don't recognize its life. There definitely, we would see the outrage, as we did with certain child killers or alleged child killers not receiving justice. We've covered that before. But are they afraid? Is the abortion industry afraid of people actually talking about this issue? Ben?
The last thing that they want anyone to do is to actually think about what an abortion is or what it does or whether it's right or wrong. All they want to do is preempt this as much as possible out of the hands of the people in the 50 states, which is the only way that abortion, of course, was legalized nationwide. The 1973 Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton case, both of them working in tandem. overturned any reasonable state restriction on abortion nationwide. And the left is not a majority in this country. It's never been a majority in this country and doesn't have majority support. We see that in polls for President Obama now. He's down 40%. The majority of people believe that health care is not a right and the government should not be dispensing it or taking that upon itself, which is good because that's certainly what the American founders thought. But you see this massive sea change where people are more conservative. And you see it when you look at the electoral maps that are nothing but red with dots of blue here and there, that is what America looks like. That's what the majority of Americans feel like and believe. But then you get an activist judge appointed by someone who has a radical ideology and who decides that people don't need to make this choice, and they encode their ideology as though it were the law. So now people like Obama say that this is a constitutional right. What encourages me is the fact that these people, and particularly in the Senate, they have to stand for re-election. And so you've seen in the Senate there's a 20-week bill that has been introduced on the grounds of fetal pain, the Pain-Capable Child Unborn Protection Act, and there's some indication, my sources tell me, that there are 6 Democrats who are leaning toward the bill, or at least are not opposed to it. We contacted all 6 of them. None of them had an official statement. It is most likely, though, that at least a few of them will vote for the bill if it comes to the floor of the Senate, particularly Joe Manchin in West Virginia, Joe Donnelly in Indiana, possibly Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. Mark Pryor is facing a tough election in Arkansas, and Mary Landrieu and Kay Hagan a lot less likely. But Landrieu and Hagan are both at least in a dead heat, possibly trailing. In one poll, Landrieu was trailing both Tom Cotton and Albert Guillory in the polls. So that decision in itself, when they are held accountable, you see that they become much more reasonable on the issue of abortion.
And interestingly enough, it's getting it out there. It's the organizations that start small, but start to grow, start to get the message out and advance and advance and advance and have that discussion where you bring it into the arena of ideas and you go back and forth and you win the case because the truth is on your side. Now, people who disagree with us possibly will say, hey, you think the truth is on your side. No, it's as science catches up to what God does, we will see that more and more. And Ben, you mentioned the fact that we have this bill in Congress and people's support. And that really relies on us getting involved and contacting our leaders, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, it does. And the polls show that the American people support this bill. 60% of the American people and more support this bill, and yet there are not 60 senators who are in favor of the bill as of yet, at least not by my count, which tells me that the American Senate and the American governing elite is well to the left of the American people. But as the old phrase goes, Ronald Reagan loved to quote it. I think it went back to Everett Dirksen, who was a Republican Senate leader from Illinois. When they feel the heat, they'll see the light. We have to hold them accountable, let them know exactly how we feel about the issue, how important it is to us, and what we will do if they don't heed our voice. And suddenly they seem to get the picture very well.
And when they talk all this in light of the war on women and that meme that keeps being repeated and being put out there, and we see people talk about the issue of abortion and cast aspersions of those who are looking to defend life, who want to protect life and advocate for life, and inevitably come up with an amendment to the Constitution. And that's part of the process, and our founders understood this, to convince others and to have that discussion and go forward with it. But bottom line, we have a professor that was on Melissa Harris Perry, and she had this to say on Saturday about the GOP and abortion opponents who protest, among other things, as well as she was also talking about Sarah Palin's new book. But here's what the professor, Anthea Butler, had to say this weekend. Roll it.
The public shaming, and this is part of the problem, because especially for poor women, if you have to go and get an abortion, you don't have the money, so you might have to go get some money for somebody. You get to the clinic and somebody's yelling in your face and telling you that you're an awful person for doing this. If you actually make it in and get the abortion, when you come out, they're telling you that you're going to go to hell. And so, but at the same time, they are stripping away everything that you needed to be able to take care of a kid if you wanted to have it, because they don't give you the
or to prevent a pregnancy.
They don't give you anything.
Yes.
And so what I want to understand, what I want to say very publicly here is that this logic of what we're talking about with abortion is wrong. Because if you're going to tell women they can't get an abortion, and you're going to take away all the benefits, you're going to take away their gynecological health, you're going to strip away everything, you're going to create a nation of women who are going to be trapped, and none of you care about the babies they will birth, and you won't care about the babies you're saving, because once they get here, you don't give a damn about them.
And that was the D word on a broadcast. Tell me something, Ben, if you're sitting at that table, and this is the question I always like, and at some point, MSNBC, I think just for survival purposes, will have to present the other side in a very strong, informed way, and they'll. I think I pray for the day they bring on the brilliance of you, Ben Johnson, and being able to articulate the points for life. But tell me, if you were at the table, how would you respond to that kind of setup?
Well, I'm sort of two minds. I think I would take two tacks with it. The first one is what she is saying here is that Republicans, and this is an old charged soul that's got whiskers on it, that if you oppose socialism, essentially, large government spending, food stamps, Medicaid expansion, things of that sort, then really you don't care about people once they're born. You're only, quote, pro-birth. You are not pro-life. And so I would ask her very seriously, straightforwardly, and get her on the record. Okay, if I were Mitch McConnell and I made a deal that all of the Republicans would vote to expand Medicaid and food stamps to the nines, as high as you would like, would you, in turn, do you think Harry Reid would be able to deliver all of the Democrats to outlaw abortion nationwide?
That's
would
great.
you make that agreement?
Absolutely wonderful.
and let the laughter ensue.
Yes. Yes.
Obviously, there's no such thing. It's an argument in bad faith. It's character assassination masquerading as an argument. And I know a lot of pro-lifers would be willing to make that trade as firmly as we believe in economic freedom,
right.
As much as we believe that this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
A lot of us would put anything in order to out of on the table in order to secure life. The second thing would be they say these people, quote unquote, pro-lifers won't give women anything. I would take them to the local crisis pregnancy center. They would give you anything.
There you
They'd
go.
give you free health care. They would give you diapers, baby clothes, anything that the child needs, any support the mother needs.
Yes.
There are maternity homes for mothers.
Amazing.
They will give you absolutely anything to secure the life of that child.
U.S. Bureau Chief, LifeSite News. I just have a new thought. Unleash the Ben. Because when he gets on you, you don't have a chance. If you're debating him, it would be wonderful. What a great advocate and reporter and journalist for life. LifeSite News, Bureau Chief, U.S. Bureau Chief, Ben Johnson. Thank you, brother. We're out of time. Live an honor in your life, compassion.